Hello and welcome to Controversial Coasters with Contriver, a series where I discuss extremely unpopular opinions that I have regarding roller coasters or amusement parks and attempt to justify them even though 90% of the community will disagree with them. In this episode, I want to bring up probably one of the most popular comparisons among coaster enthusiasts since the debut of Iron Gwazi earlier this year. Which RMC hyper hybrid in America is superior, Steel Vengeance or Iron Gwazi? Now, if you're on my Discord server, or if you've seen my 60-second review of Iron Gwazi, or if you've literally read the title and thumbnail of this video, then you'll already know what my opinion is. And frankly, I wouldn't consider it to be a super controversial opinion because I feel that there are a lot of people that also agree that Steel Vengeance is the better coaster, but judging by the feedback on my review of Iron Gwazi, I'd say there's definitely a large quantity of people who feel that Iron Gwazi is the superior coaster. In this video, I will be breaking down the layout of both as well as my experience on both, and I will try my best to thoroughly explain all of my thoughts and reasoning as to why I think Steel Vengeance is significantly better than Iron Gwazi. Before I go on to comparing these rides, I just want to clarify a possible misconception immediately. I love both of these coasters. These are literally my two favorite RMC coasters out of the 8 that I have ridden. Both of these are in my top 5 out of a total of 191 roller coasters that I have ridden as of when this video was uploaded. So that being said, please don't get the idea that I dislike Iron Gwazi or that I think it sucks in comparison to Vengeance. The whole point of this video is to thoroughly justify why I have Vengeance ranked higher than Gwazi and why I think it's a much better coaster overall. So before comparing the layouts, I just want to briefly cover the stats on both. So Steel Vengeance sits at a height of 205 feet with a 200-foot drop, and it reaches a top speed of 74 miles an hour and has a ride duration of 2 minutes and 30 seconds, features 4 inversions, and has a track length of 5,740 feet. Iron Gwazi stands at 206 feet, features a 206-foot drop, a top speed of 76 miles an hour, ride duration of 1 minute and 50 seconds, 3 inversions, and 4,075 feet of track. So right away, just looking at the height and speed, we can see that both are nearly identical, and honestly, the difference there is pretty negligible. The main difference stats-wise here is the length and duration, with Steel Vengeance lasting significantly longer, and I'll go into more detail on that later. Apart from the stats, there's also a really interesting thing I wanted to talk about with these two coasters. From the surface, or just looking at photos of these two coasters, they appear to have extremely different layouts, but when analyzing both, it feels crazy to say that both of these coasters actually feature nearly identical elements in a very similar order to some extent, and I really want to discuss that because I don't really think many people have really noticed. Lastly, I want to mention that I have a great feel for both rides. I got on Vengeance about 5 times, mostly towards the back, and I got on Gwazi exactly 13 times, mostly in the back, but some in the front and middle. Also got first thing in the morning rides on both, as well as the last train of the night on Gwazi twice, and Vengeance during last hour of operation. So starting off with the first drop, the difference here is once again very negligible. I feel like it's almost impossible to tell the difference between the two first drops. Both are gigantic and give insane airtime towards the back of the train. Yes, Gwazi's a slightly taller, faster, and steeper, but by such a slim margin. But because Iron Gwazi does have that slight edge with the statistics, as well as a really sweet head chopper at the bottom, I'll just give it to Iron Gwazi and say that Iron Gwazi has the better first drop. Moving past that, both coasters will proceed to go into a giant flowjector top hat. Now right off the bat, Vengeance already throws in an extra element that Gwazi does not have, and that's a super high-speed bunny hill after the first drop, which delivers extremely fast and aggressive ejector airtime, which is definitely a plus. So anyways, the two top hats are roughly the same size and feel the same to an extent. But here's the thing, Iron Gwazi only features one of these, and it is an outer bank one, which is superior to Vengeance's unbanked top hat. However, Vengeance actually has 2 of these, the second one being an outer banked one, just like Gwazi's. So at this point in the ride, both coasters have essentially done the same thing, except Vengeance has an extra top hat as well as a bonus speed hill. Following, both will proceed to go through an insanely aggressive and snappy inversion, Gwazi's being the death roll, and Vengeance's being a 0G roll immediately into a banked turn. Now once again, Gwazi doesn't really have anything in between the top hat and this inversion, whereas Vengeance has yet another aggressive ejector hill. So far, that's already 2 transition elements Vengeance features, but Gwazi doesn't. And so this is kind of where I'm coming from when I mentioned Gwazi's dead spots in my 60-second review of Iron Gwazi, if that makes more sense now. Anyways, looking at the inversion, both take it at such a high speed and have such insane snap. Gwazi's felt a little more aggressive in my opinion, but Vengeance's is a higher degree roll, meaning it actually spends more time rolling. Essentially, Gwazi's is shorter but snappier, and Vengeance's is longer but less snappy. Overall, I think I enjoyed both about the same, but if you're looking for pure aggression, then most people would probably take the Gwazi death roll. But once again, I personally enjoyed both equally. Moving forwards, both will proceed to go through another inversion, except these two are very different types. Gwazi goes straight from the death roll into a cutback, which I will admit is pretty snappy compared to most overbank turns or cutbacks, but it wasn't really the most aggressive or exciting element. The Vengeance inversion, which is a half stall, is probably the most holy shulky moment on a coaster I've experienced. Like, this inversion is probably the most brutally aggressive inversion on a coaster I have ridden until experiencing Velocicoaster's Mosasaurus roll. It flips you 180 degrees before instantly snapping you back the opposite opposite direction. Like, it doesn't even hang you there at all. It just ferociously yeets you back, and because of inertia, your whole body just launches laterally, and it is such an intense sensation. Easily one of the best moments on this coaster. Oh, and on top of that, Iron Gwazi once again has nothing in between these two elements, whereas Vengeance has an extra overbank turn as a transition, which delivers some nice lateral airtime. But looking back at Gwazi's cutback versus Vengeance's half stall, Vengeance easily takes the cake here, just a way better inversion. So at this point in the ride, both layouts are super similar in my opinion and offer similar experiences, with Vengeance just delivering even more in between each main element. So now is where the rides start to differ a lot. Vengeance will proceed to go through 2 more ejector hills and then cruise through the mid-course, but we're going to take a pause there and just finish up Gwazi's layout since it lacks a mid-course. While on the topic of the mid-course, I'm going to be completely honest, Vengeance's mid-course doesn't bother me at all, especially because with a ride this long at a park this popular, the mid-course really beefs up capacity, which is something Gwazi really struggles at, and I think El Toro Ryan did a really great job discussing the capacity issues with Gwazi, but that has nothing to do with me liking Vengeance more. It's just me justifying the existence of Vengeance's mid-course. Also, it never really slowed me down on any of my rides on Vengeance, and when it did, it was just very slight and did not harshly kill the momentum. Anyways, let's look at Iron Gwazi's layout following the cutback. Admittedly, the next element is something Vengeance doesn't have anything like, and is honestly what makes Iron Gwazi one of the most elite RMCs, and is really one of the best elements I've experienced, period. It's a super fast and whippy outer bank 90-degree hill that lasts seemingly forever. It throws you into it with a lot of speed, and it lasts a really long time, delivering some fantastic sustained ejector airtime. On top of that, it also slightly curves to the left while doing it, so it just makes the airtime even more overkill. For all of my SoCal enthusiasts, honestly, just think about Twisted Colossus's high five on the green side, but on steroids. It's pretty much the same element, but Gwazi's is longer, faster, more sustained, and just more aggressive. After this overkill element is a pop of airtime, and then an overbank which feels very similar to Vengeance's first overbank, and then Gwazi proceeds to go through a stall, which honestly doesn't really do much. It sorta snaps you into it a little bit, but nowhere near as much as Vengeance's. It also doesn't instantly snap you out, so it doesn't give that insane inertia abusing sensation. The stall is also taken at a speed and is profiled in a way that doesn't deliver any hang time or positives either. So it's a weird in between. So you're just kind of upside down briefly and that's it. I wouldn't entirely consider this to be another dead spot, but it is one of the more bland elements on this ride in my opinion. The best thing going for the stall in my opinion is the fact that it's going through some infrastructure and there's some head choppers, but that's about it. Afterwards, it's going to make its way into another airtime hill and then a wide turn into 2 back-to-back pops of ejector. This wide turn also feels like some dead space, but not much. It just feels like an awkward gap and makes this ride just a little bit less relentless. The 2 back-to-back airtime hills are pretty strong, but when compared to the quintuple bunny hill finale on Vengeance, I can't really see how these 2 hills have any superiority over Vengeance. Finally, Gwazi will go through another really wide turn and one final flowjector hill which is really strong, and then it will curve and slam into the brake run with a lot of speed left over. Iron Gwazi has insane pacing and doesn't feel like it slows down at all, but like I mentioned in the 60-second review, it's just got these seemingly emptier spaces, which overall just makes it feel less relentless than Steel Vengeance, and on top of everything, I feel like there's so much more potential that this ride had, like literal potential energy because of how much speed this ride has when going through that final brake run. If they had used up every ounce of momentum without harming the pacing of the ride, then I could see this moving up to like number 2 behind Vengeance, and if they gave it a second half even crazier than Vengeance's, I could see this being my number 1. And honestly, the stats on Steel Vengeance just prove that it literally would have been possible to do this with Iron Gwazi. Neither of these stations are that high off the ground, and Gwazi is slightly taller and faster, yet Vengeance has almost double the ride time and almost 1700 feet of extra track. But before I get too ahead of myself, let's finish analyzing Steel Vengeance's layout. So back to the mid-course. Vengeance will curve and go down a really strong and pretty steep drop, delivering insane ejector in the back. Like, people talk about Ghost Rider's drop off the mid-course being insane, when realistically, this is basically just the RMC version of that. After that, Vengeance will go through yet another ejector hill, immediately followed by a flowjector camelback, and then another airtime hill that starts off outer banked, but then it snaps the other way as it dives down into the infrastructure. At this point in the ride, the pacing feels even crazier because you spend so much of the rest of the layout rushing through this massive wooden structure, and you feel like you're going way faster than you really are. There's endless head choppers, and it's just amazing, and is honestly another perk Vengeance has, but Gwazi doesn't. A really long section of the ride that just hauls through its infrastructure, and is frankly one of my favorite aspects of most wooden coasters that most RMC hybrids don't really include, but Vengeance manages to include it, and I love it. Anyways, the next part of the layout consists of an overbank turn followed by a 0G roll, both taken with a lot of speed, before briefly exiting the infrastructure with another pair of ejector bunny hills. Next, you will return to the infrastructure and traverse a super trippy wave turn because it has both lateral ejector and standard ejector, so it sends you like diagonally upwards, but it's also in the infrastructure, so it makes you feel like you're gonna get launched into that wooden matrix effects, and it's just phenomenal. Afterwards, you will traverse the final 0G roll, which is visually stunning since all you can see is a plethora of wooden beams all around you. Finally, you will go through a whippy overbank before finishing off with the famous finale of Bunny Hills that I mentioned earlier. It's literally just 5 back-to-back low to the ground, insanely aggressive and strong ejector airtime hills, and then a bonus 6th pop of airtime into the final brake run. Overall, Steel Vengeance consists of not a single dry spot, especially when compared to the layout of Iron Gwazi. RMC managed to fill Steel Vengeance to the brim with insane elements, quality and quantity wise. It feels like it never slows down, it feels like it lasts forever, and every single element on this ride is extraordinary. It uses every bit of momentum and runs out the ride as long as it possibly can without harming the pacing. And by that, I mean it doesn't go so long to where it's slowing down excessively and it feels like it's just barely crawling through the last elements. It's honestly the most flawless roller coaster I've ever experienced, and as a spoiler for when I eventually do a 60-second review of this coaster, it is the only roller coaster that I will give a perfect 10 out of 10. I guess there's a few final miscellaneous things to talk about that don't really affect the actual ride experience, but visually, I think both are really impressive to look at. I love Iron Gwazi's purple track, and I adore the front of Iron Gwazi's train. I definitely like Gwazi's trains more than Vengeance, but structurally, I think Vengeance is more impressive looking. I just think that the fully wooden lift hill and the double top hat and all the surrounding wooden supports just make it look much more dramatic and intimidating, but that's just me. Vengeance just also has way better capacity with its 3 trains and just faster ops. Both have a good locker / loose article system as well, where larger items have to go into paid lockers and smaller items can either go in a pouch on Iron Gwazi or in a free locker on Steel Vengeance. Theming wise, neither have that much. It's honestly just some signs and posters in both queues. I think Gwazi has a really awesome dramatic soundtrack that plays. The pre-lift section is pretty uneventful on both, so that's kind of negligible when discussing ride experience. Both also have really pretty lighting packages at night, so there's that too. Anyways, to summarize the comparisons that I made between Steel Vengeance and Iron Gwazi, it honestly feels like Steel Vengeance basically does almost everything that Gwazi does, plus more. Near equal first drop, giant outer bank top hat, super aggressive roll, overbank turns, ejector airtime hills. That one super aggressive and sustained outer bank turn, as well as the cutback, are kind of the only elements unique to Iron Gwazi, but those two elements alone aren't really enough to make me prefer Iron Gwazi to Vengeance, especially when Vengeance features way more elements that are unique to Vengeance. For example, the drop off the mid-course, the 2 infrastructure 0G rolls, the infrastructure wave turn, the quintuple bunny hills, the speed hills in between elements, the giant unbanked top hat, etc. All in all, I really hope this video managed to thoroughly explain and or justify why I think Steel Vengeance is a better ride than Iron Gwazi. I obviously know not everyone is going to agree with me, and not everyone is going to watch this video and immediately change their minds about liking Gwazi more, because I get that there are some appeals to a shorter coaster with less elements. Like, regardless of which coaster you find to be better, there is literally no denying that Steel Vengeance just has more elements and is a longer ride. Like, it is literally and statistically longer and features more airtime hills and inversions. And I know that bigger is not always better, but when every single element on this crazy long roller coaster is just phenomenal and is insanely high quality, then I just can't see how I can prefer a ride with pretty much the same elements and pretty much the same quality, but less elements overall and with more empty space between them. If super long and relentless rides aren't your thing, then yeah, you're probably going to prefer Iron Gwazi, but quality wise, I think Steel Vengeance and Iron Gwazi both provide really powerful sensations on their elements, but in conclusion, Steel Vengeance just does it better in my opinion, and features even more elements that all deliver really amazing feelings, and it makes the ride feel much more complete and enjoyable. So anyways, thank you for watching this video. Even though I'm pretty much expecting 90% of you to disagree with me and say that Iron Gwazi is better than Steel Vengeance, I'm still going to go out and ask you to leave a comment saying which of these two North American hyper hybrid roller coasters you prefer. But anyways, if you did end up enjoying the video, then please remember to leave a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you'll be alerted whenever I upload a new video. But until then, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.